Welcome to the Ask Me Anything of PerfBytes. So, if you're connected to this live stream, then you are the right spot to ask a question. So, drop your questions right now in your favorite social network so then we can answer, not ask, to your question. For me, I have the three most experts in the performance world, and I'm referring to Mark Tullimson, of course. One, and you can see Mark is a young, beautiful man now with his new haircut.
Yeah, I went from being really old to having a birthday, and now I'm younger. Once you get past 50, they go in reverse, right?
It is. So it means
So I've
I'm
heard.
older. Gosh. We also have Mr. James Pulley, which has his webcam is not enabled, so you can almost see his picture on the current live stream.
I am also taking a rubber band and pointing it at the screen, just like Mark. The problem is my camera is out of sync, so I would be saying that, and 5 seconds later, you would actually be seeing me move. So
Okay. That's good.
rather than distract the audience, I have turned off the camera today.
So
Oh yeah, James always racks up so much attention. I know.
He does because he's so beautiful. Anyway, yes.
And last,
It's the bald
least,
head.
but
It's
not
so
last?
sexy. Yeah.
the last. Sorry, the last is Mr. Alejandro, well known under the name of Senor Performo. Hi, Alejandro, how are you?
Very good. Very happy to show to everyone watching us that this is not scripted at all. We can go and laugh and get silly at any moment, and at the same time answering questions and helping people on all of their performance needs. Hopefully, we may ask some questions as well. There are follow-ups. But mostly answering. That's it.
Okay. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that's right, Leandro. Now Hendrik, and then Hendrik says, "Oh, sorry, that's your line."
Sorry. I was a bit late. That's probably the issue with the video sync issue that James is currently facing. Sorry.
Oh yes, video syncing is a problem, James.
Tag starting video problem on James feed.
Exit stage left. Awesome. Yes, ask us anything. I'm going to check the tweet. Henrik, we've never really thanked the service that we pay for, which I think is booming here in the restreaming world. Really popular in the gaming world, I guess. Like restreaming, like you capture things and restream your live gaming to Twitch or wherever, yeah?
Yeah, I think we should be thankful for Restream. And Restream, if you hear my message, you could, if you're willing to give us a 50% discount, we are always happy to get that discounts. We are never say no to discounts. We
could barter some live live stream load testing, and one of our PerfByte sponsors, Catchpoint APM, I think just announced like some video stream load testing capabilities. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that could be a very interesting topic too, because I've been doing video load testing since during more than 6 years now. I'd be interesting on that. Could you do? Has anyone got any details on this? I'm interested in this.
I will share a historic story from because I'm so young. I remember things, and I'd like to remember one of the first. And James will definitely remember this. The first real stream, like real player, real media stream, which was kind of the RTSP streaming world, and then the Windows Media version with the two versions of those.
Windows Media Player or something, right?
Yeah, but it was like the of course it was a load runner virtual user pulling in the raw libraries, and we got the libraries, and then the R&D guys were like got the basics of streaming support in the early Web 1.0 age. And I remember like none of the machines that we had to run the demos, like you go to a conference or you go to an event and you just have your laptop to run a demo on, or like, wow, we want to show like hundreds, if not thousands of streams. And I'm like, we haven't tuned the driver. So it was not ready for prime time. And so I called up my friends. I had friends at the time at Dell. And friends.
Not just virtual user friends.
Not just exactly. I wasn't just a jerk. They were actually friends of mine who we did a bunch of shows together with the Load Runner promotions with Dell. And I called up the guys at Dell and I said, her name was Peggy, off the top of my head. And I'm like, Peggy, is there any chance that you have a machine? They had a bunch of the cased up machine. Do you have a machine sort of in transit or somewhere near San Jose, California for this conference, this event? And could I borrow 2 of them just for like 2 days? And she's like, yeah, actually, I just so happens I do have some that are just hanging out at the Dell office. Run over and pick them up. And so I got them, and they're big Dell PowerEdge servers, and we put them underneath the table at the booth. And we were streaming some like animated Star Wars something with the figurines, the stop motion photography. It was hilarious. And but I remember that early first version of being able to streaming virtual users in Load Runner in probably 1999, 98, 99, 2000, somewhere in there. It was really
and
wild.
Now the market is shifting. You look at what we're doing here with Restream Studio, which is software as a service. It's effectively it's a television studio in the cloud. We've now reversed how the streams have to go. It's no longer a problem of pulling streams. Well, that works for like large events, for the Olympics and things of that nature. How do you stream to the universe? But what about a virtual camera device? How do you get a virtual camera stream where I'm uploading 20, 40, 60, 80 camera feeds, and then some virtual producer is actually making decisions on what goes in the feed, like Henrik is doing right now, in fact, except for a lot more streams. I think the technology has to shift a little bit, and we're going to get new types of virtual users sitting out there. I know someone is going to say, hey, I can modify JMeter to do this. You go right ahead. I've yet to meet a user of JMeter who's actually modified the JMeter source to introduce a new virtual user type. Well, Mark may have, or Mark knows a guy. You helped a guy. But we're gonna need a virtual camera user at some point for if we want to test like Restream Studio and its equivalents.
So a multi-streaming virtual user.
A few years ago, when I was doing mainly a live stream or a testing platform similar to Netflix or Disney, and one year there was a project happening in Asia, and they wanted to test security systems with camera. So it was not, the use case was completely different. It was not, we have to test that 10,000 user is able to watch correct properly and have a decent experience watching the show. Here it was completely different. It was camera at home who was taking videos and pushing it to a central server. So a central server having, I don't know how many sockets open, because there was a cluster of servers, and every cluster servers were handling a number of cameras. And that project, oh my God. I at that time I was motivated, and I said, I'm going to do the protocol. And honestly, I tried. I failed.
Yeah. And that's it.
And it's hard to do. I think, what about the 2 other innovations, James, that have come along in these years is HTML5 and, of course, WebSockets. And so I'm guessing there's some stuff underneath here. Like a lot of what we push out of the ATEM Mini or even into the browser is probably WebSockets, but it's RTMP and an RTMP push through an Nginx server. So, I mean, the libraries are not elaborate, especially if you're just proxying without transcoding. And I think that's something you and I talked about encoding on the PerfBytes podcast on streaming performance many moons ago. It was paying for CPU overhead and whether you're upscaling and downscaling. Transcoding would be something that's to the novice. I'll say novice in a very respectful way. Trying to figure out where you're transcoding along the path, because it might be happening from in the camera, it might be happening in this physical switcher box, might be happening via the browser to a server running in the cloud somewhere. But you're paying CPU costs somewhere from a transcoding perspective, and then it has to make its way all the way down to the viewer. And again, that's a little CPU here, a little CPU there. And I think there could be some of this would be just like a calculator based on like the old HTTP route. We'd be able to find out all the hops where encoding, transcoding, decoding is happening, and how to minimize the number of points along the path that have to be transcoded, re-encoded, decoded.
Well, it's changed quite a bit even over the last couple of years. You look at what happens with all of the work at home from COVID, with Teams, with Zoom, with WebEx. We now have very clean adaptive bitrate streaming to the client, plus coming from the client for video streams.
Right.
We have a minimal amount coming from each client. And I think the technology has accelerated quite a bit. So we not only have this transcoding of high def video coming into the cloud, into say a Zoom or a WebEx or Jitsi on the open source front, but we have a transcoding that's taking place there, and we have multiple streams that are being created. We have an HD stream, we have a slightly less HD stream, we have an SD stream, and then we finally have a really bad video stream, and then an audio only stream for that handshake that takes place and that negotiation based upon how much bandwidth is available. So the whole streaming universe has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years, and certainly since we last chatted about streaming video and unicast versus multicast involving your content delivery network. Can you get your CDN provider to turn your unicast stream to a multicast stream, and all of those things? I mean, it's an exciting time to watch how video is evolving.
And it's adding a little to what Mark was mentioning earlier. We all think like streaming, oh yeah, it's so new, so modern. It's a little bit like when I hear Tim saying like, yeah, we're jumping into this modern thing called Aja. I'm like, modern? Wasn't that like from a little bit ago? And on top of that, the complexities that has been growing, as you say, Mark. We used to have this initial one path way of, it starts here, is decoded here, the CPU is wasted here, it's used here on this linear path. But as James mentioned, on some points the path becomes a bit of a tree and ends up in all sorts of different places. But another part of the revolution, I would say, services and microservices that are spread all over the place. Who knows where is the service that is, as you say, coding, the other that is transcoding, the other that is transcribing, that we can send the audio feed to another service, go and generate a text transcription of what I'm saying right now at this moment, and most of them are getting very good. All this is also spread all over the place. It's not that single feed that is happening. This REST service that we're using, which one, as you say, my camera, which one is the data feed, which one is the feed for the chat that we're seeing here? Please chat, send more questions, who is watching, whoever. But that complexity, we also have to take all that into account, right?
Yeah, I'm going to throw this back to Henrik because I don't know if you know, everyone, Henrik actually has this great channel on YouTube called Is It Observable? And this is my question. For all this stuff that Leandro just said, Henrik, is streaming observable? Do we have parent-child trace IDs per frame on a stream? Like that would be really interesting.
That will be interesting. But if you look at adaptive streaming, where one client is doing, I don't know how many requests per not per second, is every
Frames per second.
Every 3 seconds he's requesting for a new content, because the video is cut into small videos of 2 to 4 seconds.
Right? Yeah.
Which means if we do some tracing there, we will have to apply a lot of sampling, because otherwise I can imagine that the observability backend that receive, and let's say we are Game of Thrones decide to say we have a new season, even if it's not possible anymore. But if there's a Game of Thrones,
and
then it's going to be exploded.
For like Game of Thrones, you really need something that's multicasted, and the quality metrics need to be at the client rather than on the back end. For example,
like a time to first frame, or time to
mean opinion score.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, with measurement of video or audio quality in that sense.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if you have paid attention to your Netflix, for example, clients. At least I don't know for the others, but at Netflix, there is a way. If you go to options, there's another weird buttons on the I don't know which player you're using, and then suddenly you get
there's a weird button. I'm going to look at the weird button.
There is a dev console.
Oh yeah.
And then you can see statistics on what was the byte rates of the current frame that you were looking at, how many downloads have you been doing. So they are observing, and every single client that you have probably installed on your smart TV or on your phone or whatever, they are producing statistics, and those statistics for sure, they are not staying on your phone. They are going somewhere where they can track the quality.
And some of them are staying in your phone. Some with observability, we don't need to be overloaded and drowning in all of that data. There are few that, of course, Netflix is always paying attention and observing on us, watching us. But some others are staying on the phones to be pulled whenever it's needed, right? So that's an observability part that you need to be able to pay attention to what is important. And for what you're bringing, those traces and logs might be very different. What are you tracing? What is the line of events? Some of them are recurrent, constant updates of the feed. And some others is like Henrik started watching, Henrik stopped, and that's it. So it depends a lot.
Yeah. I wonder what attributes or characteristics of a stream should relate to an Apdex kind of score. So we already talked about like resyncing audio and video, which is one of the most annoying things. You watch like mainstream cable programs, usually like news programs where they pull in guests over technology like this. And it takes forever for their algorithm to resync that. But it's that one to be like, that's very frustrating to somebody that's just a passive viewer. It's that what other things would like kill your Apdex score for streaming?
So ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, really addressed this a long time ago for video and audio, and that's the concept of a mean opinion score instead of Apdex for audio and video. And the original sampling model for this is you get about a dozen or more people in a room, and they have this scorecard that they fill out as they're watching or listening related to audio quality or video quality and different attributes of it. And that has been collapsed into an algorithm. So that's done in this case. But the things that really impact you horribly are bandwidth. In this case, is your bandwidth constraints. If you have a teenager at home playing video games at the same time that you're trying to receive your Zoom call, and you don't have bandwidth set aside, you may in fact, they could be sharing their video for their video game that they're playing on Xbox. You could be trying to share your video, and with the asynchronous nature, or not asynchronous, but the asymmetric nature of most people's bandwidth connections, you could very easily run out of upload bandwidth for your videos, and you could have a really bad experience just based upon that.
Yeah.
I think from a streaming perspective in terms of KPI, I'm referring specifically not of RTMP or TSP. I'm referring to adaptive streaming.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been seeing that when you watch a video on any adaptive streaming platform, the first, let's say 10, 15 seconds, the player is trying to identify which quality match with your current network and your
Yeah.
current
Yep.
device. Because if I'm watching the show on the phone or if I'm watching on a 4K screen, obviously the frame, the size of the quality won't be different. I don't need the same quality. So the first one of the KPI is how long it took for the player to get the optimal quality. That's one of the first KPI. The second KPI I was thinking of is the time when you have the first frame appearing, because sometimes
Right.
you have it's loading and then boom, you have the screen. So how long did it take to get this first frame appear on screen? And the third one I was thinking of is the byte rate. I mean, if I am streaming an HD core 4K quality that I have on my catalog as a streaming provider, and
Yeah.
I suddenly see that movie every evening, I only I only
You don't get the
broadcast
highest
it.
bit rate. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I only broadcast it in, let's say, the lowest quality. Then for me, it's a sign that somehow I'm not able to deliver the HD quality to my consumers.
Yeah. To your point, Henrik, I think there's that time from the first frame to which in the web semantic I would think is time to first byte, and then there's like page visible or page usable, which is the algorithm on the client has reached what it has determined is the ideal bit rate for your viewing session. And so, and then you'll see like, oh wow, now it looks pretty good. Now we're running pretty good. And you can still try to push it, like override the algorithm, but maybe that interval time is we always want to get people to their optimal frame rate or bit rate with like an SLO would be, hey, my objective is to do that in 2 seconds or less or 3 seconds or less. Because if it goes on for 15 seconds, I'm like, what's wrong with these guys? And I start messing around with it, which would go to the frustration score within the aptX. So yeah, oh cool, I like that.
I
We
think
have a question, I see.
Yeah, we have fresh new questions from Raul Sergio. So he asked, in fact, two questions, but I'm going to pop up the the second question, sorry. So because
You can take me out of the frame there.
sorry.
No, that's fine. I'll answer it, or yeah.
That's it, like this. That would be better. So the question is from Raul. Raul, first of all, thanks Raul for asking the question. So Raul is from Brazil, and he is a consultant. So if there is an opportunity, reach out to Raul. He is interesting to get some remote engagement. So if you need someone, and you make sure that reach out to Raul, because Raul is providing some expertise. Question from Raul. So he has been working from 6 years now in performance worlds. Are there any tips or topics that he needs to focus to improve himself?
That's
So who
a
wants to
loaded
answer that question?
question. Well, if I can say, as I started from also a Latin American, coming from a Latin American country and working with many organizations, yes, it's totally possible. I would say the first wall to break there, or requirement, which for what I can read on your writing, is to speak English. You already covered that. It's the business language of the world mostly. And yes, I would say French is also a big requirement. But I don't know.
Oh yes, we have to say that. We're required to say that for Henrik, right? Man,
Oui. Le français.
It's the language of diplomacy. Yes.
You mean the game diplomacy, like with the countries and things? I thought, yeah, very awesome. Go on, Leandro. I like what you're saying.
Yeah. But on a quick answer, yes, there are lots of possibilities and opportunities out there working remotely. There are a few ones that I like a lot, like crowd testing for performance and load testing. You can generate sync with people, manually generate some load and check what is happening from different locations, especially remotely. That's why it is appreciated. And as a remote scripter, as a remote automator, and doing some tests, some and full remote positions, that as well. There's wide availability. I don't know areas or tips to focus on, because there are so many. Performance is large, wide, and varied specialty or area to do. I wouldn't know which ones to tell you to focus on.
I've got
Everything's
one,
important.
Leandro.
Go for it, James.
Make someone else successful. You've got 6 years of experience. This is about the peak of our profession. Lloyd Watts recently did a survey of performance testers that showed how many people were in the profession at different years. And somewhere between the 7th and 8th year, we have kind of peaks in the profession, and it tends to drop off after that. People see fewer opportunities for whatever reason. They go and they become a project manager, they take a demotion and become a developer, things of that nature.
They get an MBA.
Yeah. They go to business. They put you in the dental chair.
Wait, are you exactly? Are you an Oracle DBA or are you an MBA? Like, which? Make a choice here, really.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is help the industry grow. You have a lot of experience at the 6-year mark. Let's face it, somewhere between 4 and 5 years, we all became really interesting because we'd seen enough bad patterns that we knew what to look for. We built up our pattern library. You've got your pattern library built up. Help educate somebody else. Take the passion you have and bring it to, a dozen other people and help them visualize what's going on from a performance perspective. They could be junior developers, they could be testers, they could be someone in architecture, but bring that passion, help them understand performance better. It'll make your job easier. It'll help our profession grow. So we don't stagnate in that sense, that eventually Mark and I will die. We will. Someone has to replace us. Yes, we all will. We're all mortal in this case.
I don't know about
that. There is one performance tester who shall go unnamed that I think has a picture that is covered up that ages while they don't. But you can ask me offline who that person is. So that's what I would say. If you want to tip somewhere to focus, and as someone, I was a math mentor and instructor in college as well for high school students, to help them with their math. And it helped me actually understand math better as well, having to teach it to someone else. I had to be able to ground the concepts. I had to be able to walk them through the material. And that should also make you a better performance engineer by being able to accept the challenge of explaining these concepts and helping other people understand them as well. That may not be the answer you were looking for, but I would say at the mark you are at that 6 to 8 year mark, this is the perfect time to be a mentor and help to spread the passion.
I would add a few things here. I think it makes sense, but try being the mentor is a great way of improving, because you will take the time to summarize and simplify explanations so people can be start their career in the performance world. But otherwise, what I would suggest, and this I did, I never tried to specialize myself on a specific technology, because technology is moving so fast. So I would say try to, of course, take the engagement that will make you leave, I mean, being paid, but try to always go to on the forefront of the innovation. So then, if there is a new technology pumping up, then you know how to manage it, and you would be the consultants that will get the engagement. So
Yeah.
try to always look at the cutting edge technology, ask you the right questions. How can I test it? How can I validate? What will be the KPI? Like we just discussed with the streaming part, I think that will be the way of pushing your career upper
Yeah.
on the higher level, and putting yourself in a higher chair of expertise, I would say.
Yeah. I'll say just very briefly, both Leandro and Henrik answers are good, partially from Leandro's perspective, because he's been a consultant recently and remotely having to connect himself to a company to get out there, find projects and such. But there's this idea of specializing in a protocol or application platform or stack versus becoming more general. And to James's point, like we, after you've been specialized, like I really loved PeopleSoft and Tuxedo. Call me crazy, but I did that. James did a bunch of stuff in the
You're
Windsock world.
crazy.
Thank you. I'm out of my mind. And you specialize in database technologies, or you specialize in sort of core web technologies or client performance. In performance stuff, I think there's still an opportunity at about 5 or 6 years to still be specializing. But the expectation for the next 4 or 5 years in your career, Raul, you should be thinking, do I want to really become and let the industry know I am specializing in, let's say, streaming, modern contemporary streaming architectures, or WebSocket applications, or a particular sector? I think you could still specialize, and remotely it works because you can find in the industry, people looking for work, you can find a lot of generalists for the most part, especially with some seniority or some tenure in their career. But you'll still go, hey, these guys are great, but I'm not a streaming guru. I'm not James Pulley in the Windsock world or some of these things. I would still, and I have in the past, I got a gig, I would reach out to a person like James, and nowadays I would do that remotely. So if you advertised yourself or promoted yourself as having a specialty, at least the real strength of one particular area, I think now remotely companies are more flexible about, well, let's pull in that depth specialist to be that consultant. And then get on shows like you're talking to the four of us. We have all these different ways of getting on podcasts, getting your own blog, having the community support you in those ways. And I think that's the way to go. Eventually, if you specialize enough times, like, well, I did database stuff, now I got burned out, I want to do something different, you'll work your way after 25 or 30 years. You'll be the generalist, but that's because you visited all of those things along the way. But I think at 5 or 6 years in your career, you could pick a strength, a channel, and say, I'm going to become a .NET web technology person. And we see that in the web perf side as well. So, yeah. But I think it's a great time to be remote. But you've got to be able to promote yourself. The other challenge is building relationships. I think that's still core to everything we do to collaborate and find things, solve problems using a modern observability stack. But you still got to bring people together and build those relationships. And so I think to James's point, help someone else be successful in solving a problem and or learning the craft is a way to build those relationships. But yeah, good on you. Thanks for the question.
It's very interesting because on the lines that you, James, Mark, and Henrik, we all contributing to this. For what James mentioned, and from the Amigo Lloyd article, I don't feel like that's your peak, but that's where the 6-7 year mark, it's when you get enough knowledge to build around it and start to share it. A very good
Yeah.
recommendation. I love that James did that. Follows Richard Feynman's that to really learn something, to really understand it, it happens when you have to explain it. That has been something that I think personally that happened. Probably here the rest of the PerfBytes amigos got that, but when I started to have to explain things and how am I gonna share this, even before becoming this person you see on this channel trying to help the world from bad performance practices,
Yeah.
I had to go with clients and say, oh, how can I explain to you what am I doing, why it is important to you for the software to perform, and so many of those things. You will find much more knowledge, and to the point that specialization for a short period of time is good, that you become the tool guru or a master of SMTP or who knows what will be. But in these changing technology days, that is a big recommendation. Keep a wide perspective, understanding and learning other tools, other methodologies, technologies, and knowing how to apply around it. I would say that's critical. Don't get stuck in, I'm the best mechanic for gasoline engine cars, and then it comes Mr. Elon Musk and leaves you out of a trade. That may
There
happen.
will always be a job for a Ferrari mechanic. I just want to point that out.
That's a good point.
But I'm not sure that there is a lot of Ferrari running on gasoline. But I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, great question, Raul. Way to go, man. We have another one here. We have two
Yeah.
more. I have one offline, but we can take the next one here.
Here it is.
I will jump on this just in a second, because my last little PerfBit tip thing last week was called integrated performance testing. So how do you, like, if you test each little app on the pipeline or in a nightly run, and you get these great great results just for your app in a vacuum, but in production the DBAs are like, yeah, I have 400 little components, and then they all run at the same time against the same table, and we've never run load on that table to find, and in this lower environments we don't have the same test data, so the plans are not exactly right, or what we got away with a scan and now in production you can't do that. So the thing that happens that I talked about on the PerfBytes Weekly, you're like, all right, you're going to test independently on the pipeline in development and QA, and then once a week or once every other week, a couple times depending on your iteration, whatever cadence you need, you're going to bring all of the components together. Give me the latest, greatest on a Friday, and we're running IPT, Integrated Performance Test, where suddenly we ramp up enough load on all of the components so that even the database or even the virtual machine host, a container host, you're like, ooh, wait a minute, this thing is way out of tolerance. Like, now we're running this stuff together, a little bit here and a little more there and a little more there. Suddenly, oops, VMware, the host we're out of CPU, or the database wise, you end up with a different plan or something. So adopting an approach to integrated, to bring, at least on some cadence, bringing everything together and running them at the same time is important.
And there's some interesting technology books out there that can help you in this. For instance, Oracle has DB replay. So if you have a recording of the other app and what it was doing on the database, if you could do a DB replay off of that, and it's over the same time scale, by the way. So you're replaying over the same time scale, and you run your test for app 2 on the same database. I'm not sure what exactly would happen there, but it would be interesting. And you would probably learn something about how these two things interacted from a lock contention perspective, either on a row or a page or a table. And that would give you some insight. It wouldn't be perfect, but you could do some of that in the pipeline and get some insight in this case. Profiling is going to be your friend. Absolutely. And some of these things you might be running on the same database instance, or you might be running on the same physical database instance, but two logical databases. And that also has not as interesting capabilities or interesting possibilities as two apps running against the same database. So I can remember some of these same challenges in the migration era of the web. And I'm going to roll this back, and Mark is going to start having a fit here when I start saying this. I can remember companies taking the LoadRunner VUGen, recording the database calls that were being generated by the two-tier client server front end, and then building a web app for the most commonly used business process with a CGI gateway to go to the database. How the heck do you test that thing? Well, in that case, it was a little bit of database virtual user, a little bit of web virtual user, or a little bit of maybe Oracle Web Replay along with web virtual user that went along with that. So it was kind of interesting. Challenges come back around. Don't get me started on whether you want, a virtualized file system instance with your database server. That's the whole, virtual machine guest operating system on a guest operating system. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to get upset.
James, if you don't remember, maybe you do remember, the first Mercury Web Conference talk I ever gave at a Mercury user conference was on hybrid virtual users, web and SQL and the database, and how to actually go under the covers and actually hack the files and bring the libraries together into a single virtual user. And it's the most nervous I have ever been. I had like breathing problems because I'm thinking, hey, this is just cool, fun stuff. And I can get on stage and do that. And the room was packed with a bunch of people I did not know. And I see a few people who are like senior R&D people from Mercury in the back of the room. And I'm like, oh, holy crap. Oh,
and what am I doing here? They're talking among themselves while
they're like leaning each other
and they're pointing at you. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And little did I know, they're like, okay, we could actually make this a lot easier to do with blah, blah, blah. And I think 10 years later, boom, you've got multi-protocol virtual user support, which was a brilliant idea. Anyway, I'm not claiming anything in that, but it was the most nervous I've ever been on this thing. So I'll hand it back, Leandro or Henrik. You had something.
Yeah, just to add on this, so just to remind you, so testing a mutual database is, like you mentioned, Mark, is clearly important. If you have one component of your architecture that is shared with several applications, then it makes sense to test it, how it behaves when all those apps starts to be generating out of load. But I would just remind one aspect that we discussed with Alejandro on one of the previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
If you test your database with that serve two distinct applications, then you need a significant volumes of data sets. Otherwise, your test that you will generate may not reflect real life, or you may have issues, or you may understand what's going on, or you will probably detect issues that will just be related to the fact that you didn't have any assets, enough database.
I completely agree. I think just for clarification, James's point was, if I have two streams of SQL activity with entity contention on the same tables in the same actual schema, or do I have two separate data sources running on the same physical machine? There's different kinds of contention at that point. I think I retweeted something from our friends at Cockroach Labs, the Cockroach database, and they had said, what is database contention? And they talked a little bit about this. Like, you may have two totally separate databases, so you don't have table locking, physical index competition, or latching issues within the entities, but underneath that, you're sharing an I/O port, you're sharing bandwidth to the storage, bandwidth to the network. So there are different kinds of contention. To your point, like knowing what kind of contention am I going to have, and your customer changes too, Henrik. I think I'm going to hijack this because it gets me excited. It isn't Ask Me Anything, but it makes me think of something else, Henrik, which is your customer changes. So if you're on the pipeline testing for code efficiency and database query changes, N+1 problems in a single database by itself testing, your customers are usually database devs or developers in that team. The minute you switch to test the contention for physical resources and or entity contention within a database, your customers maybe shift over to the infrastructure team, shifting right. You're maybe DBAs, maybe other people that are like, whoa, wait a minute, we actually manage the budget for more physical resources, cloud elasticity, container management. It may be your DevOps team or your infrastructure team that you kind of need to bring them into the conversation. And that changes who's supporting your effort as well, I think.
And yeah, go ahead.
Go on, Henrik.
No, go ahead.
So, adding up to all that has been talked around, and what you're asking brings me as well, similar to Mark, to those situations where we had to test, or it was a business requirement from a customer that we had to check the performance on this, check how multiple systems. And I want to point out a little risk that I saw most of the testing team, the initial want was to try to test or automate all of those other applications that access your database. If you already have some of those automations, great. Use them, leverage them, and try to see the utilization. But being your central database, that possible source of bottlenecks or problems, as Jane says, the utilization of that database, if it's already somehow in production, try to monitor and observe what are the queries, what are the type of requests. If you can, that's another big recommendation. There are databases that have that capability within, or you may have to use something else. Capture the queries, just reproduce them, and make sure that you test at the database level, because you'll be clearing like this needle in the haystack. First, obsess around the database, make sure that there are no bottlenecks, no queries fighting for the same table, locking resources, rows, whatever. You'll be able to assure that the performance is good, tuning up at the database level. Then I would suggest, if you have around some automations for those different applications that you mentioned, it would be interesting because at times you can have data problems from the applications. Some of those, like, oops, I didn't release a connection. Okay. Internally, you won't be able to test that. That's somehow important. And the approach also will change if it's a system that you are going to release eventually, or if it's already in production. Because if you already can monitor, you already have the measurements and ways to quickly and easily simulate a database access from another application that is already working, is already well, and just, as I said, record those queries, capture it, and generate the load at a query level directly into the database. Don't worry that much around that. And the new piece that you're trying to add into production, test it separately, then automate there at the front end, making sure that it doesn't add up too much to the connections. Mostly, I would say you gotta be kind of smart of how you are approaching these type of situations. And there's no one approach for, like in performance. It always depends on the context of what you're trying to do. How's your project? How is everything around it? How are you releasing? Are you agile? Are you Big Bang waterfall? Are you water fragile, or any of those other flavors?
Yeah.
Lots of things.
Yeah, excellent.
I think we have another questions that just came.
We do, but we're going to lose James. So let's just say bid him adieu. Is that the right way to say that in French?
Au revoir. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
And then you say au revoir, and then you go up, like one of the presidents did. So you go up and say au revoir, and then you leave.
Au revoir.
Drop mic and
yes, and then somebody throws a shoe at him.
Everybody, happy testing. Thank you for your time today.
Take care, amigo James.
See you,
Thank
amigo.
you, James. See you.
Groovy.
Okay.
So we have one more question from our good friend of the show for many years, Trisha Jatani.
So, what kind of questions for performance testing aspect do you ask while interviewing the candidate for performance testing position? Oh, that's a pity that James just left because he has. I'm just going to remind
A
his
book around it.
again. So I'm going to
Yeah.
push it
For
here.
performance. Oh,
Here
yeah.
is. So here
I
is
actually-
the book with the
There you
link
go.
of Amazon that you can get. So if you next time I will try to put some QR code so it will be easier for you guys. But if
Oh,
it's
cool.
a question related to interviewing, hiring software performance testing professionals, there is a really, really good book that Mr. James Pulley has write. So you should read it.
Yeah, it's great.
And I
I'm going to give
would
two.
start-
Go ahead, Leandro, please.
Yeah, I would start there, making a little bit more segues to James's book. Why do we need a whole book on this topic? I mean, if I can say quickly, it depends on what is the role for the performance tester position. Is it going to be just a scripter? Is it going to be an observability performance specialist? Is it going to be a performance analysis engineer that sets up all the scenarios? All of the above, which hopefully that's not the case because that's going to be a very hard position to fill up. But it's very circumstantial, right?
Yeah. It is. I think the two things I would say back to that I see as a fault, and James brings these up in the book a little bit, is that if you just borrow, and a lot of people do this, just borrow developer interviewing, you're going to miss a lot of the aspects for performance about time, about volume and throughput, about protocol and infrastructure. You might, like you say, Leandro, they might be great scripters, like they can code their way around any virtual user you want to do, but you're interviewing for somebody. Do you need them to be in infrastructure, understand end to end the entire system? So James goes into that a lot. And I see folks ask me, how would you interview people? I am a very cerebral interviewer. Like, I'm going to ask if you can see a picture of traffic and you can start describing the aspects of what is it like, what's the experience for a user in a car stuck in traffic with congestion, and what's the context for what would make them happy or sad in terms of timing and stuff. I get into that kind of thinking because I can help someone learn any of the protocols. Even I have to learn new protocols and stuff. We are just talking about streaming at the beginning of this. There's all sorts of new stuff to learn. That's in a way the easy part. The hard part, I think, is, are you thinking conceptually about performance no matter what component is put in front of you? Observability helps you find those components, even if you're not familiar with them, but you still have to be able to think about, what if there's more connections to that component? What if we push too many things through that little component? What's the data source to the other question we had about database stuff? So yeah, I check out the book.
I would add, I will present some results.
Oh, sure.
And I will let the candidate read the entire report or whatever related to an existing test. And then he has a few minutes to explain the conclusion. Because communication is a skills that is difficult to train, because you can take some training, of course, but being able to summarize some technical aspect and present it to a non-technical audience is something that probably the performance engineer will have to do in his career. So that will be a pretty good exercise to do. And also, of course, you need an architecture background. I mean, you need to understand what is how a modern architecture has been designed, the various aspect. But I think, technical aspect could be you could train yourself, you can educate yourself by reading books or reading articles or following stuff or looking at videos, YouTube channels like Is It Observable, for example, or PerfBytes or whatever, or Scenario Performo. But
and
but
also like get
communication is
into
something difficult.
the open source community. You can get in and actually see how stuff is built, which is very white box capability of learning. It's like, oh, I can actually see the source code of how JMeter wraps that protocol, or how a tool actually built an interface, or how the application works. So that's something that's really nice now. It's not really opaque. You can actually see and learn more transparently. But I agree.
And to Trisha's question as well, I'm thinking of what is the perspective that she's asking that question from, which I may ask another question to her. Are you seeing it from the interviewer perspective? Are you gonna interview people, or are you looking to smashing those interviews and getting the job? And so, but because those are different realms, and if you have to put together, as Mark was saying, when he interviews people, you're cerebral, you're looking for, you are Mark can be a mentor. We can probably all of us.
I'm already mentoring Trisha, as we all are, I think. She's awesome.
Hopefully, we're mentoring everyone watching this and helping asynchronously in a way.
That's right.
But it's very important. If you're just gonna be hiring someone to help in an area where you just need to drop this person to hit the ground running, that's gonna be also a different interview. I do agree a lot with Mark. If I'm gonna have this person near me and I can keep an eye, my biggest question was, can this person learn? And if it has a mindset of growth and quickly picking up things, of course, you may not know much about performance. You showed me knowledge around other areas that you can pick them up, that I can quickly set you up, of course. But on the other side, if you are applying for positions, that's another story. I would say just really, really pay attention on what this organization is looking for as a skill set, and focus on being able to answer those questions, right? Because it will vary a lot. And some others, as I said earlier, we just need a scripter. We just need someone to create scenarios. I got one where on observability, on the days that I didn't know about observability, we just need someone to understand Dynatrace and to be able to read this information like, oh, I know about response times. Does that help? Meh, no. So you will deal with this type of things. Make sure that you can walk around those aspects. Or if you're lucky enough to be interviewed by someone like Mark that is willing just to check that the hamster's spinning well up there and you can pick up on things.
Yeah.
It's
actually, so I know we're getting close to the end of our time here, but I wonder if doing a mock interview with a mentor, like somebody, another performance savvy person, and maybe, that's another thing we could publish, our mock interviews, and you like role play them. And so we would give you an interviewer mock interview for like 5 different kinds of companies, and then you could practice. That's a good idea.
I would even go to the to the fun way and record the worst interview situation. So everything that you should not do. So then you will realize by video that that's dumb. So I wouldn't do it.
If you'll know if you're stuck in a bad interview. I know I'm the candidate here, but can I just opt out because you guys don't know what you're doing? I'm out of here.
It's a
all
very
over
good
our industry.
It's a very good point because again, segueing James's book, what he gets is like, you will walk into these interviews when it's HR people that have no idea, or management.
Sure.
And we'll be asking you questions that, and I've seen those where the interviewer has no idea of what performance testing or what truly should be asked. and the interviewee also is not that sure, or and that those are going to be a lot of fun sitcom material for one of
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
simulations.
And I don't know if you guys have this experience like I do, but again, to like Raul's position, I've been, if he's reaching a kind of intermediate to advanced capability after that many years. And when you're in an interview, and I'm sure I've been in this, you know more about the subject area. And I think you'll see this in machine learning. You probably saw it in information security stuff for a while, performance for sure. Any of these niche kind of specialty, a little bit deeper technology. And I'm not being disrespectful of other disciplines that are equally complex, but at least from my experience for interviewing and performance, the balance of that interview, Leandro, that you just said is, you know more about the subject area than potentially the people interviewing you, but they know more about whether there's a opportunity that will make you happy, make you succeed, help make the door is open for growth and learning. So in a way, you're always interviewing both sides of the equation. You're interviewing them, and they might not know anything about performance, and you might expect that. And so the real trick is not just HR wise, but where are you experiencing problems? What kinds of components give you the biggest challenges? When you guys are operating, what's describe the last crash you had in production? Like, these are questions I have when I was consulting. It was just like, so, describe how you handled it, describe how you found it. And then you can sort of ascertain you've got weaknesses in some areas, strengths in other areas. And those are things I'm interested in helping you fix. Or you might say, look, like Raul, let's say Raul got so excited about streaming. He's like, I'm going to go become a modern WebSocket, HTML, adaptive streaming guru in the performance world for a streaming performance. And he's doing an interview, and even they might be interviewed on, well, we don't really have our APM game together. We don't really do database stuff. Like, he might find that the weaknesses don't align with where he's going, but he's sucked into an interview. So, Leandro, you bring up a really insightful point there. Thank you.
I would also to add something that try to detect during the interview if what the company is suggesting is a false promise. Saying, for example, they say, "You're going to be a project manager. You're going to set up this this
And you end up
practice
just
and do the
scripting.
automation and so on." And at the end, you're just a scripter. Try to also figure out, because like Mark said, there's a big chance that you have more knowledge than the guy asking you questions in front of you, and he's probably doesn't have a clue of the job, and he thinks it's just about analyzing, and then at the end it's just scripting. So try to understand precisely what would be your career within that role, because that could be just a waste of time for you.
Yeah, exactly, Henrik. If you detect they have that weakness, or that kind of, that's where they need to grow or mature what they're doing. Are you interested in being the person that helps them do that? And secondarily, do they seem even open to the idea that they need to mature that? Well, tell me, do you have other people that have led the scripting team before? No. Okay. How big is the scripting team? 2 people. You'll be the third person. Somebody's tired of doing paperwork, so we're going to have you do the paperwork. It's like, all right, that's 2 hours a week. What am I going to do for the other 38 hours in the week? Oh, you'll probably do some scripting. And that's, come on. I actually wanted to become an architect. I wanted to learn the systems, build relationships, put together processes, automate those processes, not just scripts, automate how we do this. Yeah. It's really good points. Leandro, go ahead. I interrupted.
Yeah. Now, and looking that we're already over the allotted time, the other side from the interviewer and the interviewee, that I often have been in the situation when it is probably a no-go as an interviewer, when you identify, you don't, and again, to that story that happened to me, they told me, we need someone that hits the ground running with observability, with Dynatrace monitoring. And that was great on one hand, because they told me right away, you have good skills on an area of performance, but not what we're looking for. And that teaches me, because they as well told me, would you be able to repeat this in 2-3 weeks and show us that you are capable of learning that on your side? And it's something that I absorbed on my practice, to call it in a way. If people do not
Yeah.
know, I notice it and I point it like, hey, we need this, and that. And I can tell that you lack it. And not only in performance, I have walked into that with regular um, people skills, or I don't know, pandemic days where people show up without a camera, or not, like they just woke up or things like that. Some of those
Yes.
recommendations, right? And on
Yeah.
the other hand, where I have been in the position where, oh, should I have no idea of these things that they are asking me? Be open, be honest about it. I know we are at times desperate to be employed and getting that position, but it's important that you don't end up in that place where your rack is totally around scripting and you end up on something that, or you may not enjoy, or you may get in trouble because you said you kind of knew that. So be open right away. That's a very good one. The interviewer will appreciate it.
Yeah.
The good use of everyone's time.
And to promote Leandro's book, which is also we have a link for, is somebody who started, Leandro, in your career growing through that phase, really studying scripting and studying the ins and outs of very intricate or complex correlations. And you teach that as a way to actually cement your own expertise. So check out Leandro's book, because he knows he's been through this in multiple
yeah.
ways, more recently than me, to be very honest with you. So yeah,
Lots of
absolutely.
awful stories of growth and learning.
Yeah, so you can have, there's a physical copy, or you can also have the Kindle version, so the numerical version as well.
I'm a Kindle guy.
Yeah.
I was good with that. Yeah.
So before we conclude, I just want to bring up three things, in fact. The first one is, for those who are listening to PerfBytes, I would like to remind that Mark has started a weekly, every Friday. He's producing episodes called PerfBytes.
And they look a lot like this, like a purple background with the same. Like I'm sitting in the same spot, of course, but I'm not here. Wait a minute. I could switch to the thing. Just the perf
Yay.
bits. There you go.
So stay tuned and watch the content that Mark has prepared. It's very helpful, especially if you want to make your career in the performance engineering landscape. Second channel I would like to promote is so I didn't find the letter. Sorry, of so the Espanol one. So my French keyboard
No worries.
didn't. So it's Senor Performo, but it's here.
Just
Is the
search
URL.
for it on the YouTube search
Yep.
bar, and you'll find the English version and the Spanish version. If you want to practice Spanish, practice English, depending on where you're coming from, and learn some performance, you'll be very welcome.
And last is the Is It Observable channel. So if you up to working in and you need to observe given cloud native system, Kubernetes or anything, I try to build content that will help you to understand the technology and some tutorial as well.
Yeah.
All right. So I think enough from a promotion side. So I think we spent 1 hour and almost 10 minutes now. So I think I thank you for, first of all, for the time that you spent with us. Thanks for all the one that has asked questions. And I will ask first, Mark, what is your conclusion?
People still have questions. And in each of these, I think I'll applaud the fact that these were really smart questions. Like there was no simple answer. And there's definitely, there never is. So right, Leandro. And there, it's not, it's, and we're also, I think we'll go multiple layers deep in the conversation. Like the same thing when the 3 or 4 of us are talking and just adding on to one another. is the same thing you're doing as a performance engineer. You're digging down in layers, seeing how stuff is connected. So oddly, that's my thanks, my shout out to our question contributors and chatters today, because we got to bear witness to their questions doing what a really good performance mind does, which is dig in and start connecting the dots between stuff. So yeah, I'd say thank you to that. And thank you to everyone. Thank you, Henrik, for hosting this. You do a marvelous job with the Restream buttons. I'm still learning Restream, but it's, sliding the things around and doing all that is really, really great. It's always great to be here with you guys. At the end of every month, I have them scheduled out. So we'll do it again at the end of March. But this is really great. Ask us anything, asterisks, about performance.
Leandro?
So on my end, as closing thoughts, as Mark was saying, even us at this level, adding up to what we're saying, today I learned some things from what was Mark saying, what Henrik said, what James, and hopefully from vice versa from what I was saying for you, everyone. And that's why I disagreed a little bit with Lois' article, where that 6-7 year mark is where you reach your peak. You reach a level where you can learn more. For me, that 6-7 year mark, then it was a big growth where you start to get into other things. So I will close. Keep learning, keep growing on on all the performance testing areas and any other areas if you're interested as well. And a very good way is trying to teach it. That was getting to a topic as if you were going to explain it to someone, and you'll see the ways that you learn it will be way better than it was that you just were learning it for your job or for something. You'll get deeper into the topic and get a better understanding. And as Mark said, thank you everyone for enduring our silliness conversations and peculiar answers.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, it would be think performance, eat performance, consume observability, and enjoy. All right. So
Eat, drink, dive in. Performance is a pool. Just dive in the deep end.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Just jump naked
strip
in
off
the
your
pool
thoughts
of performance, and you'll see.
swim. Yeah. So thank you. That's all right. Now from this point on, it's the
PG-13, guys. We're on
unexpurgated
YouTube.
Yes.
All right. So thanks. See you soon for another Ask Me Anything. So next month we'll have another one.
Cool.
Enjoy your day.
Tell your friends, invite them, tell them we answer
Yes.
questions.
All right. See you.
Adios.
Bye.